Okay, my friends, we're going to pick back up with our chapter 34 on vertebrates. So last we left off, we were talking about the movement of our vertebrates from the water environment onto land. And we watched the video about Tiktaalik and how Tiktaalik is likely an intermediary species that shows us a animal that likely was able to crawl out of the ocean and live on land. So moving on to look at amphibians. So amphibians are in the class Amphibia. Quite a few different species of amphibians. The two that we're going to talk about are salamanders and frogs. So if we look at, again, our tree, our clade, you can see that amphibians is here. Salamanders fall into the Urodela class. They are amphibians with tails. Some of them are aquatic, but there are others that live on land as adults or throughout their entire life. One unique thing about salamanders is that they have the property that we've described before, pedomorphosis, which is the retention of juvenile features in sexually mature organisms. So it's very common that we see that in aquatic salamanders. And we saw this, I believe, last semester when we looked at salamanders and how salamanders are actually pretty unique in that they are able to regrow limbs. And this is something that scientists are very interested in because we're trying to figure out how can we potentially regrow missing limbs or limbs that have been lost through accidents or wars in people. So this is something that is a very important, highly researched organism, are these types of salamanders. Frogs in the class Anura are amphibians that lack tails and have powerful hind legs for movement on land. Frogs that are found to have leathery skin are called toads. So this is a quick little video to talk about the difference between frogs and toads. Let's see if we can get this to work. Turn on our I believe there's a video. Here we go.
Hello YouTube, we're here today to show you the differences between frogs and toads, so please enjoy the video. First off, toads have dry bumpy skin and only spend about 10% of their life in the water when they're larva stage and when they're mating. And frogs spend about 95% of their life in the water. So that's opposite. And they're wet and slimy. So that part, they're pretty much the complete opposite. When toads are stalking their prey, they'll usually climb up to it very slowly and use camouflage because they have short tongues. Frogs, on the other hand, just look at their prey, dive at it with their long tongues, and just hope they catch it. Here's the underbelly of the frog. The frog's underbelly is very white because they don't need any camouflage for that part. On the other hand, toads need the camouflage there. And toads also like to play dead, so do frogs sometimes as their last defense mechanism. So there they are, both playing dead. And as for habitat, as I said, dry and wet. Later on in the channel, I'll make a video of how to make a frog habitat and a toad habitat. And that's
cute. Okay. So both of these frogs and salamanders are amphibians. And when we think about what this means, amphibian means both ways of life, referring to the metamorphosis of the aquatic larva into a terrestrial adult. So they are living on land at certain periods of time in their development and then living in the water during certain times of development as well. So some amphibians are strictly aquatic or strictly terrestrial, meaning land, but mostly most of them are going to have portions of their life cycle on land and portions of the life cycle in water or in damp environments. So most of the amphibians, the salamanders and the frogs, have moist skin that is going to complement or aid the gas exchange that takes place in their lungs. So looking at the process of development in the frog, tadpole, again, swimming around in an aquatic environment, they go through this process of metamorphosis, so changing from a tadpole, looks more like a fish, start to grow the limbs, and then the tail starts to disappear during metamorphosis. And then you have your adult frogs. These adult frogs live in very, again, damp environments, but the adults will actually return to a more aqueous environment to mate and then lay their eggs so that the tadpoles, when they hatch, will be able to grow and live in the water. Okay, so moving on to a group that is described as amniotes. Amniotes are the group of tetrapods. Remember, tetrapods are animals that have 4 limbs. The amniotes living members are reptiles, and reptiles include the group of birds. So we'll talk about reptiles, and then we'll talk specifically about birds, and then we will look at what is the way that birds actually evolved from reptiles. And amniotes also are including mammals. So the reptiles, which include birds and mammals, are going to fall into our group of tetrapods described as amniotes. And amniotes specifically are the tetrapods that have an egg that is terrestrially adapted, meaning that the egg is able to live on land. So if we look at our tree here, so the ancestral amniote, remember, is an ancestral characteristic. And then you can see that you have a common ancestor for reptiles, which is going to go on to create all of these organisms, including birds. So modern day birds are here. And then down at the bottom here, you have mammals. So we'll talk about mammals as well. Oh, let me go back here. Again, a common ancestor for reptiles leads to birds, as we said, but also lots of extinct species. So if you see the little cross here, that means that it is a species or a group of animals that are now extinct. Ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, which lived in the water, dinosaurs that lived on land, pterosaurs, dinosaurs that actually flew, and ultimately then we have our living species of birds that came from dinosaurs. Okay, so some derived characters of amniotes. The amniotic egg is an egg that contains membranes that help to protect the embryo. The amniotic egg is found in different places, depending on the type of animal that you're talking about. And we're going to look at some differences that we see here. The membranes that are important for protecting the embryo are the amnion, the chorion, the yolk sac, and the allantois. The amnion encloses the embryo in a fluid-filled sac, which helps to reduce the dependence of tetrapods on an aqueous environment for reproduction. So again, this is important as animals were transitioning from amphibians to reptiles. They had to have the ability for the eggs to be created and gestated either inside of the animal or on a terrestrial environment. So this amniotic egg aided in the transition of animals from amphibians, which require water for at least some portion of their life cycle, to reptiles, which do not need water. Doesn't mean they don't live in or near water too, but the amphibians require it for at least some part of their life cycle. So this is looking at a generic version of what a amniotic egg would look like. So here's your embryo. Around the embryo, you have the amniotic sac. So that's your amnion. And then we have our allantois here, the yolk, which is the nutrients that are feeding the embryo. You have the albumin, and if you think of a chicken egg, we know we have the yolk, we have the albumin, which is the white portion of the egg, and then you have the shell outside of this. So we have similar structures in mammals. Our amniotic egg, we do not have a hard shell on the outside, but we do have similar structures otherwise. Let's see. Okay, so the amniotic egg was a very important key adaptation to life on land, as I mentioned, allowed for things to move from being amphibians into reptiles. Most of the reptile amniotic eggs have a shell, and some, just a few mammal amniotic eggs have a shell. Most do not. And amniotes have other terrestrial adaptations, such as impermeable skin, and the ability to use a rib cage to ventilate the lungs. So the lungs became more important in terms of gas exchange, and that rib cage being able to expand and retract allowed for lungs to get bigger, which allowed for greater gas exchange, greater surface area for movement of oxygen into cells and carbon dioxide out. And this also allowed for body sizes to get larger, because enough oxygen was coming in to allow for ATP to be created in an aerobic fashion. So reptiles. Reptiles include quite a variety of things. Some things that we'll focus on: lizards, snakes, turtles, crocodilians, which include crocodiles and alligators, birds, and then quite a few extinct groups of dinosaurs. Reptiles have scales that create a waterproof barrier for the organism. Most reptiles lay shelled eggs on land, and what happens is that fertilization will occur internally, and then the egg is secreted, and the eggshell is formed. The embryo develops internally, the eggshell also develops internally, and then the egg is secreted onto the land. So here are reptiles down here. Most reptiles are ectothermic, so that means that they absorb external heat as their main source of body heat. That means that ectotherms, so think of lizards, snakes, crocodiles, alligators, they have to regulate their body temperature through behavioral adaptations. So what that means is, because they are cold-blooded, another term for that is ectothermic, they need to rely upon the sun to warm their body temperature to the right degrees. So think of turtles sunning themselves on logs around water environments. The opposite of that is animals that are endothermic. So birds are an example of endothermic organisms that are capable of maintaining their body temperature through their metabolism. So we would fall into this category too. We are endothermic as well. We also describe this as warm-blooded because metabolism keeps us at the right body temperature. So reptiles, ectothermic, they absorb heat to maintain their body temperature. They use the sun, they use shade to help with this. They use water to help with this, to maintain their body temperature at the right degree, whereas our body temperatures are maintained by metabolism, and then also brain, which helps to monitor what the temperature is and perform functions to help to regulate that body temperature. So looking at some examples of reptiles, lizards and snakes. So lizards and snakes make up a particular lineage called the squamates or squamates. Squamates, lizards and snakes, can be very variable in their sizes. They can be very tiny, so 16 millimeters long. So again, 16 millimeters is 1.6 centimeters, so very tiny, all the way up to the Komodo dragon at 3 meters long. So that's very, very large, up to, what is that, 9 feet long. Here's a picture of a Australian thorny devil lizard. So this is a very interesting looking little guy here. Snakes are lepidosaurs that evolved from lizards with legs. Snakes are interesting. They are carnivorous. They have adaptations to aid in the capture and consumption of prey. Some of these adaptations you already know about. Snakes are one of those things that people are afraid of because there are some dangerous snakes. Most of them are not, though. The adaptations that help them to find and capture and eat their prey, chemical sensors, so they're able to pick up on where prey might be hiding, where they have gone before. They're also able to pick up on heat, so they're able to detect heat in prey, so they can sense which direction they need to move in to find prey. Venom is important. It can actually, when they bite something, it can paralyze the victim. That then allows them time to eat. And the way that they do it is they actually have these very loosely articulated jawbones, meaning their jawbones are able to open very wide apart from each other, and very elastic skin. So snakes are able to eat and digest very, very large organisms, much larger than themselves, break that down. So snakes often only need to eat periodically, right? They don't need to eat every couple hours. If they eat something large enough, that meal can last them for a week or 2 weeks, depending on how much energy they're gathering or gaining from that particular type of prey. Turtles are a favorite reptile of many people, including myself. They are very interesting. There are turtles that live mostly underwater, so sea turtles. There are tortoises. We'll look at the difference between these two. Tortoises typically live on land, but all turtles have a box-like shell made up of upper and lower shields. And those upper and lower shields, which are protective for their soft bodies, are fused to the vertebrae. So they do have vertebrae, clavicles, and ribs inside of that box shell. Some turtles have adapted to deserts. Others live entirely in ponds and rivers, like I mentioned. The largest turtles that live on the land are actually sea turtles. And many species of sea turtles we know are endangered because of lack of areas to lay their eggs. So there are quite a few beaches that now have protected times or protected areas where sea turtles will come back and lay their eggs on the shore. And there are areas that are roped off so that people can't disturb nests, so that these sea turtles are able to lay their eggs, and then the baby turtles are able to come out of their shell and then make it to the water. Now we know, again, that's a major time when those little baby turtles can be picked off by seagulls and other types of predators that might be looking for a very quick meal of those little baby turtles. So let's watch this quick video on differences between tortoises and turtles.
And welcome back to another episode. Today, you can see I am joined by one of the cutest gosh darn reptiles we have here at SeaQuest. Yesterday, we talked about the capybara, the world's largest rodent. They are very, very cool and one of my favorites as well. But today, you can see I've got a different friend with me. We have got Storm and Norman, the sulcata tortoise. Now, the sulcata tortoise is native to Africa. They're also known as the spur thigh tortoise. Now, he's got the spurs back on those back legs there. He's got the spur that sticks out about this far, and that's why they're called the spur thigh tortoise, as well as the sulcata tortoise. Now, they live in Africa. Take a look at these big front legs. Take a look at those. They're very, very big, very, very strong, and he's gonna use these front legs to dig. Now the sulcata tortoise will dig big dens, and that's where they're gonna hide out during the hottest parts of the day, because it gets pretty hot where these guys are from. So they're gonna hide out in that burrow, and then once it cools down a little bit, they'll come out, they'll eat some more of their favorite types of food. Now, what do you think my friend Stormy Norman eats? Do you think he eats sushi, tacos? What do you think? So he eats a variety of different types of vegetables, grasses, and he is a vegetarian strictly. Now, Stormy Norman here, one of his favorite, oh, did you sneeze? Gesundheit. Bless you. One of his favorite foods, he loves yellow squash. Now, I don't like yellow squash, but it's a good thing he does because we have a lot of it. Now, you can see he's following it. He's pretty gosh darn hungry. Now, let's feed him. Let's take a look at that. All right, yummy, yummy, yummy. Now, take a look at that mouth. This is 1 out of 4 animals we have here at SeaQuest that has a beak. Let's feed him again. Get a nice up-close shot of that. Oh, so yummy. You just love it, don't you? So this animal, he does eat a lot. He eats a lot of veggies, a lot of grasses, a lot of hay. He eats a lot. So right now, he is about 100 pounds, but he's gonna get even bigger than that. He can get upwards of 200 pounds. Now that's the males. The males will get bigger than the females when it comes to the sulcata tortoise. There you go. We'll move it over here so we get you back in the camera. So we can get upwards of 200 pounds. Now, Stormy Norman here just celebrated his 27th birthday. But the sulcata tortoise can live for over 100 years. Now, that is a very, very long time. And you can see this is a very smart reptile, too. He's following me. He's saying, hey, do you have any more food? Quit talking to them. Look at me and feed me, right? That's what he's saying right now. You can just tell, right? Now, one of my favorite reptiles, like we said, one of the 4 animals here at SeaQuest that has a beak. And next episode, we're going to be talking about one of the other reptiles, another one of those 4 that have a beak. So tune on in next time. Make sure if you're not already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram so you can see all of these amazing videos that we're shooting every day, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Thank you so much for coming in today, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, well, that didn't tell us the difference between turtles and tortoises, but tortoises generally are very large. They can have very long lifespans. Tortoises are known to live primarily on land, where turtles can live on both land and water, but seem to have a propensity to live in the water at greater. They're more likely to live in water for more of their lives. So turtles versus tortoises. Crocodilians. So crocodilians are alligators and crocodiles. They both fall into this category. They actually are very, very old in terms of when they evolved, date back to the late Triassic, which is a period during which there were dinosaurs or living dinosaurs. Living crocodilians are restricted to warm regions. They do not survive well in areas that get cold in the winter. There are alligators and crocodiles. So again, they look very similar, but they are a little bit different. And let's see if this one actually tells us.
If you shop with the Walmart app, you know everything you need. It's right at your fingertips. So you can spend a little less, to get a little more, to make life a little better.
I'm Coyote Peterson. This is Mario Aldecoa. One of these 2 reptiles is an alligator, and the other is a crocodile. Do you know which is which? Stay tuned, because we're about to show you. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so what I have in my hands right here This is the American alligator.
And what I have in my hands is the American crocodile.
And right now we're in South Florida. And what's really awesome about this location is that this is the only place in the world where these two reptiles' territories overlap. However, catching these two animals was far easier said than done. Let's take a look at last night's catches. There's something right here.
Where is it? Hold on,
Right there, right
I don't
in
see it. Stay right there. Let me see if I can get closer. I got a shot on him, so if you want to go for it.
I got it. 1, 2, 3.
I got it. Nice. I got it. Woo! Great grab. Woo! All right.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that right there is the first piece of the puzzle, the American crocodile. Now we just need to find an American alligator. Got an alligator right there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, full weight going into this. This is one of those things, you don't think about it, you just do it. Ready?
Yep.
1, 2. Got him. Got him. Woo! Woo! Just barely got right behind his neck. Watch your fingers. Here we go. Bringing him up. Wow. There it is. All right, now we got to get the American crocodile up close with this American alligator. Oh man, this is awesome. Look at those teeth. Man, those are some pretty epic catches last night, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, how cool was it to catch an alligator and a crocodile in the same night?
Certainly a first for me. Now, this is great because it's giving us the opportunity to answer a question that a lot of people write in and ask me. Sure, they also ask you, what's the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? Most people look at a reptile like this and think, oh, it's one and the same. But not really. Once you get them up next to each other, you can really see that they're pretty different looking. Now, obviously, these are both reptiles, both crocodilians, and both have been on the planet for what, over 200 million years?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Their lineage is prehistoric.
So we're pretty much looking at dinosaurs here.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so first let's look at the differences in snout structure, because this is probably a real easy way to identify these animals in the wild, correct?
Yeah, that's how I identify them. It's very easy. Crocodiles have a pointed, narrow snout. Alligators have a broad, round snout.
Yeah, look how broad that snout is, and that has to do with the type of food that they're eating.
Absolutely, yeah. Crocodiles are more coastal habitats, so they're gonna be eating fish, and they want skinnier jaws to potentially thrash around and grab the fish.
Right, and I can see that with the tooth structure. Those look like little shears. I look at the alligator, and of course we know that alligators are opportunistic. Raccoons, deer, pretty much anything that comes across these jaws, and they have big, broad jaws for crushing their food, pretty much. They crush and swallow things whole. Now, one other similarity that all crocodilians have is a nictitating membrane, and that's really cool. This is kind of like a built-in set of goggles for when you're underwater hunting. Now let's talk about the color of these reptiles, because that is also very distinct. You'll notice that the alligator is very dark in coloration, almost black, and I would imagine that this helps it stay camouflaged in dark, murky water, as well as probably being able to help it absorb sun. As we know, reptiles are ectotherms, meaning that they need the sun to heat up their bodies so that they can go out and be active. The crocodile, however, is much lighter in coloration. Why is that?
Because of its environment. So these guys live in coastal habitats, and they're gonna blend in right with the sand.
Yeah, you'll notice that just this coloration in the scutes and the scale pattern does almost look like sand. I mean, an alligator like this, if it was in a dark, murky swamp, you could look straight down at it and not even see that it's there.
Yeah.
Obviously helps it catch its prey once it comes up to the shore, and boom, they lunge out of the water to grab something.
Another difference, take a look at all the scales on the croc and the alligator, especially around the tail. So these are what we call scutes. And if you see, the crocodile has really pronounced scutes, they're longer. The alligator has shorter ones. And those scutes help them propel better through the water.
Yeah, you can see that the alligator's tail is much more knobby in design, whereas the crocodile's tail, how about that for an explosion of power? Yeah, you really need to keep your hands locked on the neck of the alligator and its jaw so that he doesn't get my fingers in his mouth. But you could maybe see right there just how their tail can quickly whip around, and that is all muscle.
This kind of leads to a really common question I get as well, and that is in their temperament. Crocodiles tend to have a very bad reputation. They are considered more dangerous than alligators. But that's not true here in Florida at all. American crocs are actually really shy animals. Alligators are a little bit more bold here in Florida because they're more common, and sometimes they're found in more residential areas.
Right, so they're kind of accustomed to being around humans. But even still, in both of these instances, these animals are not out there looking to actually eat humans. Oftentimes, I know when it's an alligator attack, it's mistaken identity. Somebody that's swimming in the water, dark water specifically, you're thrashing around, you're going to seem like a wounded animal or a fish, and as an opportunistic feeder, and the alligator's going to go after you.
Correct.
Now, aside from the physical differences between these two crocodilians, there is something that you need to know that you can't physically see. The American crocodile is actually considered endangered here in South Florida, while the American alligator is just protected. Far more likely to come across one of these beasts than you are a crocodile. If you're out there in the wild and you see a slender snout, consider yourself lucky, because it's probably a once in a lifetime. I'm Coyote Peterson. Be brave. Stay wild. We'll see you on the next adventure. You ready to let these two crocodilians go?
Let's do it.
See you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
If you thought that was a cool comparison, check out the differences between the alligator.
Cute. All right, that will be it for this part. I will pick back up with birds in the next installment of chapter 34. Thanks.